Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Well, I spent 25 years running and operating restaurants, Brian, as a restaurant manager and bar manager. And always I felt like a salesperson trapped inside of a hospitality worker's body, if you will. About 15 years ago, my wife moved from education and educational sales and had tremendous success, allowing me about 9 years ago to take a step into a different direction. And I was fortunate enough to be picked up by CCPI and CCP Industries as a sales rep. Did that for a couple years, and because I think there's so much training involved in restaurants, I navigated toward training other reps. And then about 5 years ago, I was promoted to being a regional sales manager here in the Great Lakes area. So
Great. And what was it like managing restaurants? I'm a big customer
yeah,
of restaurants. I can't imagine being on the other side, though.
you know what you just take a dive in for a month. It is really, there's nothing more. It's kind of like, it's exciting. There's always something going on. There's an energy, a vibe that I think it's hard to replace by anything else. But there's also just terror, moments of terror, and a lot of nightmares. And to this day, I still have some. So
Well, I think the corollaries to selling are very close, where you've only got to control over a certain amount of things. And you're between the customer and the employees and the product. And a lot of things can go wrong, right?
absolutely. And as much as you prepare for those things, I mean, I learned early on, and not to go too far in the weeds, and if I do, stop me, but there was something called a line check. And one of my restaurants I worked at, the line check would take almost an hour. And yeah, I gained a lot of weight because you taste everything, you temp everything, you check the dates on everything. And as a managing partner of the restaurant, we're like, wow, this is a lot of time. But the fruits of that preparation are that there are less customer complaints, less phone calls from the health department going, we got some people sick. And those kind of, and you have start having those kind of complaints. You go, that hour doing that line check is really not wasted time. It's very
Yeah.
valuable. And I do agree, there's so many corollaries between the restaurant world and what I'm doing currently. Right now, I feel like a restaurant manager trapped inside a sales manager body sometimes. Some of these conversations I have with my folks, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like talking to a server back 20 years ago. How we get different things into our mind and different perceptions that just slow us down. And they're very similar.
Yeah. And what was that first year like in sales for you?
To a degree, I thought I died and went to heaven.
Really? Good.
Because and I'm not going to kid you, I'm a little bit on the older side to be in sales and being
Really?
nine
Yeah.
years in, but I had been like a mid 50-year-old guy on a Saturday night bussing tables because somebody didn't show up, or being called in on one of the two Saturdays you get off a year because the dishwasher went down on a Friday or Saturday night, and to all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm watching football on weekends. I get to spend more time with my family. There's a lot of those kind of benefits. And then the first year in sales, one of the biggest struggles I had was in my own head. Is like, oh my gosh, am I cut out to do this? Oh, this prospect doesn't want to see me. I mean, you probably know the litany much better
Sure.
than I do, but it was all there. And you face those challenges, those dragons, if you will, and you learn to overcome them. And they do pop their ugly heads up now and again. But you've beaten them back once, you can beat them back again. So I love the challenge of that first year. And we'll keep trying to do, right? Keep trying to put more challenges in front of us because every day is a learning experience.
And I got to imagine you had a lot of that in the restaurant business as well. Angry customers or annoying customers, flaky employees, flaky vendors.
Keep going. You're doing great.
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
all the above. And probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, you could say there's maybe some regrets I didn't get into sales earlier in life, but I wouldn't trade any of the years I had in restaurants. And one of the things that one advantage I have, I brought from the restaurant world, is like a customer complaint, for example. A lot of folks will try and avoid that, or push it off hoping it goes away. What I learned early on, because you got hair in the food, I mean, I won't gross you out with a bunch of stuff, but there's a lot of different complaints you handle in the restaurant world. And you learn early on that the sooner you address it, take ownership of it, you apologize for it. And something, thankfully, my wife taught me years ago, which I'm still practicing, is how let them vent, let them
Yes.
get it off their chest.
Yes.
And then you tell them what you're going to do, what you're going to do to fix it. You get their buy into that fix. And then, by gosh, you do it. And then you follow up. And I'm going to tell you, Brian, I won more long-term customers in the restaurant world and in the sales world by handling it that way. It's almost like, gosh, I hope a problem does come up. So that we can win it, win them over, win them a little bit deeper than if everything just went smooth.
Yeah. And what surprised you about sales when you got into it?
You know, like I said, that's a really good question. It surprised me about sales. I
Well,
guess why more people don't do it in one sense. It's
it's
sales can be a
misunderstood.
lot of fun, you know. Um, but it's you know what? I can't give you one. I'm sorry. It's more like every day is so different in sales. And if you're open to it, I guess one thing that surprised me would be how much you can learn and how much there's so many different variables. I mean, you mentioned the different variables in the restaurant world. Well, sorry, but after 25 years, it became ho hum. If the dish machine goes down, or Johnny the Buster's smoking marijuana in the cooler, hey, been there, done that. Here's what we're gonna do. So it kind of came routine. I kind of fell asleep for a little bit,
Yeah.
and even though you have all these different things popping at you, it's like, all right. But in the in the sales world, man, there's always something you can do. I mean, you refer a lot of times to you being more strategic and being smarter and not doing the same, doing more dumb things faster. That's always a challenge. That doesn't come naturally. That's something you have to kind of have a mindset and do intentionally.
Well, that's it. Because I always found the great salespeople, they look at the vast depth and breadth of selling and they get excited by it instead of overwhelmed by it. 'Cause a lot of people just ignore it and they'll just like show up and do the dumb things as fast as they can and go home.
Well, there you go. Now, and then there's another correlation to the restaurant world. I mean, you can run a mediocre restaurant and you can get business. It'll be fine. You can go ahead and let's take a wait on a Friday, Saturday night. You can let that wait run up to an hour or 2 hours long, turning people away, or you can bust your tail and motivate your team to get those tables turning just a little bit quicker. And you always got to show what's in it for them, just like you do in sales. And it's like, hey, if you get one more table in or sell one more cocktail or one more appetizer, that translates to your paycheck, as well as just a general gratification of doing a job well.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can go through life kind of half asleep if you want to. You can go through sales half asleep. But man, getting out there and digging in, that's where the juice is.
Yeah. And how long did it take before you got your mojo in sales where it was?
I'm still working on it. No, it's actually about a year. If there's a year of like, oh my God, what am I doing? It was so comfortable in the restaurant world. I knew exactly what I was doing. About a year, and that year kicked in. I started going, okay, now I'm going to look at some of these really high performers and start trying to emulate what they're doing.
Smart.
Getting to the idea of there's a better way to do it, right? So I started trying to follow those guys. Saw my sales exponentially increase and my success, and it was that was about 12 months. It took about 12 months for me to really get my mojo going.
And what were they doing differently than what you were doing?
Well, they were doing smarter things.
You're kidding, not just more?
Just more. And in my world, we didn't talk much about my industry. We're an industrial supply. We do have industrial supplies, everything from PPE to your common wiping cloth or rag. And so it's a kind of a crowded field that we have to really go in and try and make ourselves not a commodity and stand out very quickly. And we do that at CCP by our expertise. But there's a lot of training we're involved in. A rag is not a rag. A towel is not a towel. It's got many nuances to it. and we have to get that across to our prospects quickly. So at first I'd go out and prospect. Okay, if somebody uses disposable gloves, everybody uses a rag or a towel of some kind. They're my prospect. And then I learned from these other gentlemen and ladies that, you know what, maybe you go after a distributor who can go after the smaller accounts. Or perhaps you go after the large food processing company. It takes a little bit longer sales cycle, but it may take a month or two to actually get that one all the way through, where you can go to a small mom and pop place and open, selling one case of towels, one case of gloves, but now you're selling, 5, 6 pallets. And if you compare the time, there's a lot better payoff in selling the pallets versus selling a case.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you knew that or not, but I thought I'd share that.
Well, I actually have somebody in one of my courses in this industry, and I was trying to help him because, he was doing what his manager told him, which was as many stops as possible at restaurants, old age homes, whoever.
Yes.
And some people cared about the quality, some people only cared about the price. And what you just described kind of sums up 5 years of experience in 5 minutes of what to do.
School of hard knocks, right? You learn.
Well, I bet you weren't encouraged to do that either, were you?
No, no. And it's funny, most of my peers now that I'm in sales management, we haven't made that leap yet. I'm still working on it, on how to work smarter, on instead of doing that. Now, I will tell you, the pandemic really helped, because instead of saying, okay, go out in the field, make 20 in-person calls, blah blah blah, we can no longer do that for a period of time. And I've got, I hate to, well, I should say this. I've got a gentleman who's been with my company for almost 50 years. He pretended like there was no pandemic. He just kept doing
Kept going.
thing. But then some of my folks had breakout years because they were forced to do something different and take that step into, doing more LinkedIn, doing more research, getting people's attention with an email, those type of things, instead of just knocking on doors and just getting your bruised knuckles from knocking on doors. So.
Yeah. And was it that you didn't want to do all the dumb things, or you just wanted to maximize your income given your amount of time?
Exactly. You want to maximize your income, maximize your effectiveness. I mean, dumb things can be fun, but okay.
You got to know how dumb they are.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like a cold call,
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes you want to do that just for fun, but that's entertainment. That's not making yourself an income. So.
Yeah. And did you have the interpersonal? You must have had the interpersonal skills after 25 years in a restaurant, right?
Oh, yes. I went into restaurants. I got a degree from business administration, and I went to a strange city, had this, desk job, didn't know anybody. So I said, yeah, I got my nights free. Started waiting tables, right? Oh my gosh, what fun that was. Then started bartending in Dallas back in the 80s. So I'll let your imagination go there. It was a great time. Then I had to grow up, had kids, and went into management. So interpersonal skills, I've been, I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah.
Building the relationship, as you might say, having the conversations. That's where really the juicy part is. So
Yeah. It wasn't just how many places you could stop at per day.
Oh my gosh, in that first year of sales, for example, I'd be like, all right, I did my 20. It's noon. I guess I'm going.
Now what do I do?
I made no sales. I made no lasting contacts, but I did my 20. Now, after a couple of days of that, and you start seeing your paycheck, you go, oh yeah, that's not the idea.
That's not the objective, is it?
No, but I got my 20 done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's it for me. I got frustrated. I hated wasting time. Because most of my sale, I had to get on a plane. So you have to get up super early. You have to travel. And it's like, if it turns out to be a waste of time, it's very painful.
Right. What else could you have been doing?
Hopefully anything could have been, sleeping could have been better use of my time.
Exactly. Yeah. Waste of time is gone. And we all get the same amount, right? So
And I think leaders tend to think, oh, that's good practice. And I'm like, well, maybe I know how to get up early. I don't need practice on how to get up early or go meet people who aren't interested in what we do. I need practice on people who are interested in what we do.
Well, and that goes back to practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. I'm from Indiana, right? So basketball is huge here. So I practice shooting, as a kid, practice shooting all the time. Well, guess what? Then when it got to be game time, I wasn't very good because somebody would guard me and I couldn't hit a shot. So it's perfect practice.
Yeah.
So,
And what do you say is your strongest sales characteristic?
with all humility, I think my only real skill, I think, is connecting with someone. Genuinely in my heart and in my mindset, putting aside commissions, putting aside the sale, putting aside anything that might be in it for me, but putting myself, if I were that individual, what would be good for them? And there's where my solutions come from. And guess what? There comes your success too.
And where'd you learn that, or how'd you discover that?
I learned that from my dad.
Yeah.
He was also in sales, and it was a good experience.
Was
He
he a
taught me the
salesperson, or
expression.
was he just naturally good with people?
Both naturally good
Yeah.
with people and and then a good good salesperson. He taught me that, and the old expression, you don't know what a man's going through until you walk a mile in his moccasins.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, and we live that, and that's what we try and do to this day.
And how do you do that with a stranger? Let's say it's a first call. How do you demonstrate that that's your sincere intent?
And it's funny to quantify it or putting into terms because it really has to come, not to get fuzzy on you, but it's got to come from inside. I think you genuinely have to believe it yourself. And I could not be involved in an organization or selling something that I was not 100% behind myself or gung ho for. That'd be disingenuous. It's got to be from the heart. And you can fake it, but I wouldn't want to try.
No.
So I don't know if that helps or not, but that's what I would
Well,
do.
it's the most sincere or the most complete definition of trust is proving to someone else that you have their best interest in mind, even above your own.
And I think that becomes evident. I like to think it becomes evident to people fairly quickly, at least it's been my experience, if you start with that as your foundation. So,
Because I think because certainly that's not what anyone thinks of as a salesperson.
right, right. It's counter to the perspective, the prejudice that's out there, or what's been traditionally thought of. So that's why I
Yeah.
leave my plaid sport coat in the car when I go in on a sales
Yeah.
call.
Because, if you said, what comes to mind when I say salesperson? Oh, someone out for themselves.
Yeah,
So the opposite is that someone out for you.
exactly. Exactly. And that's the what we have to try and get over sometimes because people have that image of us.
We
So,
have to do it because of that.
right. Right. So I wish I could bottle that and tell you exactly, what works for me that way, but I think just genuinely having a mindset of trying to help others.
And you kind of surprised me that when you first said, oh, that first year getting into sales, about how people wouldn't want to talk to you, that
Mhm.
you had a little insecure, or
A lot.
really?
Yeah, a lot of insecurity. I mean, it's one thing when someone comes into your place of business, like a restaurant or a
Right. It's
bar.
inbound.
Yeah, they're coming there for a purpose, right?
Yeah.
It's
They're
another
not
thing when
lost.
you walk into their restaurant or bar, it's a little different, or walk into their home. So it's one thing that you set the table, if you will, and then you got to bring the table with you. And you just, over that first year, I really kind of developed this, like, hey, wait a minute, if you go in with the idea of taking care of them, just I'm here to help. And if you don't want me to help, I'll dust, I'll kick the dust off my sandals and I'll move elsewhere.
Yeah.
So,
And what do you see the younger salespeople not getting, or taking longer than it should take to get?
Well, I almost, and this comes from my restaurant background, I've seen many generations, if you will, go through the workforce, including now the last 9 years. And I think it's not necessarily just generational, maybe young. My issue is probably with people who have been doing sales the longest,
Yeah.
is they're more embracing, I'm going to try and squeeze every nickel out of this prospect or customer instead of the bigger picture, if you will, and getting the dollars by being of service and taking care of them. And I think that's, so as far as the younger ones go, or the newer to sales go, I think it's that same hurdle I faced that first year, is getting your footing and finding your own voice.
Yeah.
And that just takes time. And I think people have to allow themselves that time.
And what did you do to kind of accelerate that? Because I got to imagine that first year was uncomfortable, given, especially when you became really good at something, then you go to something that is brand new to you.
Well, I was fortunate. And again, I would say I'm maybe you'll find a lot of this in the hospitality world. I knew that I was going to make a change. So by gosh, I dedicated myself to that change. I was in a training team of 4 other folks, a little bit younger. So the perception was, oh, they're going to grasp technology like the CRM faster and all that kind of crap, and learning the products. And they've already been in sales, so they're going to be more successful because of that. Well, I use that as a fuel or as a chip on my shoulder and go, oh, no way. You know what? Just because I'm a certain age doesn't mean that I can't grasp technology. So I made that. I worked a little bit harder, spent a little more time, studied a little bit more. I try and always read something to try and develop. There's some great podcasts out there. I don't know if you can recommend any, but there's some great podcasts. There's a lot of great tools out there to accelerate your success that weren't necessarily on my radar 9 years ago. But my gosh, you are responsible for your own performance and your own development. And it's a shame if you don't take advantage of some of these great opportunities that are in front of us today. So,
yeah. And you have a competitive nature to yourself there?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny. I asked my team one time, I was like, okay, on a continuum, over here is, you want to make money or the dollar is important to you. And over here is taking care of the customer. It's not necessarily black and white like that, but let's just say it's a continuum. A couple of my folks were way over here on dollars, right? So you think they're the most competitive. I'm a little bit more over here on the side of taking care of customers. But that doesn't mean I don't want to take care of more customers than this guy. I just want to get myself out there more and become more effective, like you mentioned, do it a little bit faster, a little more accelerated, and take care of more people. That way I'm more of a service to my community, if you will.
And your business, that is a long-term strategy because it compounds.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know the value of referral customers, but man, that's the way to get them right there. Instead of, I'm going to make a few dollars extra today and then burn a bridge. It's like, no. This is reoccurring orders. So we want to develop a long-term relationship and then get some referrals and go from there.
Because I got to imagine your client base is birds of a feather. They know each other. They ask each other, what do you use? Who should I call for this?
They change opportunities.
That's true too. So very transient industry.
Right. It's a lot of fun.
Well, what sales characteristic, if you developed more of, would really take your game to the next level?
I think what I need to develop, be even better and stronger at, is doing the smart things, learning even more so how to prospect on a broader scale, on a larger scale, a larger customer base. Those are the challenges I have before me right now that I'm looking forward to tackling.
Yeah. And do you have that sounds like you do, creative gene, where you're like looking to think outside the box? And
I may not be as creative as I appear or like to be, but I am pretty good at stealing things.
Taking someone else's creativity.
Borrowing things. Yeah.
Well, why not? Right.
That's right. My most frustrating times when I try to reinvent the wheel, whether it be in restaurant world or in the sales world. Reinventing the wheel, boy, that takes a long time. So
Yeah. And I got to imagine you also knew what your customers wanted from a salesperson. You probably were the buyer at one time of these types of things or dealt with the salespeople.
exactly, and that's one of the driving forces that attracted me to CCP Industries was I I dealt with rental companies, rental uniform companies, different vendors for different things that we use. I'm going like, God, there's got to be a better way, you know, and CCP in many ways is a better way. So, and I'd
Yeah.
be happy to talk to you about that, but it's probably not the right forum. So,
Well, I can imagine, because I hear from both sides, salespeople at those companies and users of those products. It's, the cramming of the KPIs and the pushiness and the, you know, cheesy techniques. That's not what a buyer wants at a restaurant, right?
no, but if you can go in there and say, okay, you're using, XYZ. If you tried this product, what do you think about this product? Would this have merit? Because it does have these features, but what do you think of it? Or what does your line cook think of it, or your server, or whomever it might be? You get them involved, and you get a conversation going. And from that conversation, it becomes even more obvious that you're looking out for their benefit. There's no such thing as really a closed technique. It does itself. So
So you're not much into the demo and the presentation.
very much, very much into the demo, but it's got to be. I like it to be organic. I like to be including all parties. Like, what are you using? Have you ever thought about trying this? So
That conversational approach.
yeah, I heard that somewhere. That's a really good thing to do.
That's a real good idea. And what do you wish you learned 9 years ago that you know today?
I wish I'd learned 9 years ago that a big sale isn't any harder than a small sale. That
Yeah.
walking into the C-suite of a large organization is you can do that just as quickly as walking to 10 small ones that will get you nowhere. Um, that's one thing I wish I'd put in my pocket years ago. So
Yeah. And what was not there back then? Was it the confidence, the know-how, you didn't know that you didn't
well,
know, or
all that
yeah,
plus, we have again from a certain generation, we had a business model that was go out and make all these small calls, do all these dumb things, you're gonna get some dumb results, but you'll have enough that you can make a living. And it's
yeah.
relatively easy. You don't have to challenge yourself. You can work from a relatively small catalog of products and just keep doing the same thing over and over again. There's, I guess, a comfort to that, but you don't
Well,
grow.
well,
And
being busy is comfortable sometimes. It's distracting.
and it can be confusing from being effective. You know.
It's the opposite.
hmm
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think a
Exactly.
lot of
It
busy
camouflages
people
it.
feel like they're doing something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to sit still. I gotta get something done. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, Chris, I really enjoyed this. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Of course, I'm on LinkedIn with about 1,000 other Chris Allens, but I'm Chris Allen at CCP Industries. You can also reach out by email if you like at crexallen@gmail.com.